what I will say is like the month that we were kind of on the field playing a lot, we were pretty close. Like for only being together a month, like the chemistry was, developed really quickly, which is important for a new team.
Hi, and welcome to Someone You Should Meet. Today, I'm speaking with San Diego Loyal captain, Sal Zizzo. Sal, thanks so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just trying not to go crazy in quarantine with my three girls, ages 5, 3, and 1.5. So,
oh my gosh.
yeah, something
They're
I'm not.
intense ages.
Yeah, something I'm not entirely used to, but it's fun. But it can also be a little crazy at times.
How are you coping with it all? Because my girls are slightly older. I've got a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, so they're upstairs right now doing their homework, well, their schoolwork. But I remember them being at that age, and that is intense. They're wanting your attention all the time. So, like, how are you managing to get anything done?
Yeah, they haven't reached like the public school age yet, so it's pretty similar. Other than we're at home all day and there's not much to do, outside of the house. We'll take them for bike rides or scooter rides or stuff like that. But yeah, they demand a lot of attention, and it's a lot of work for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. And how are they getting on, like, between themselves? Are they falling out a lot because they're with each other all the time? Or my girls, they're kind of best friends one second and killing each other the next.
You hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, they're fun. They're playing together sometimes, and then other times one of them screaming coming down the stairs. Saying "sister hit me" or something like that. I don't know. It could be anything at that point. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, they're the same. I mean, like I said, they're not used to going to school every day, so they're used to kind of being in the house. They just can't. We can't really visit many people, and we can't, go to a lot of fun places.
How's your wife coping with it all? Because honestly, Sal, it's kind of us mums that take the brunt of this.
Yeah, no, it's God bless her. She's pretty good at it. She has more patience than I do with a lot of things, and it's like in her DNA. I don't know what it is, but she's a little bit more calming, and she's used to it. She's used to being around the house with them. But for me, being home, it is a little bit more help. She gets a little bit more help. I do a lot of the cooking.
Nice.
So that helps.
What do you like to cook?
I do a little bit of everything, to be honest. I'm constantly looking up recipes during this time too, and trying to figure out some stuff. My wife's vegan, so and I'm just now turned probably 6 months now vegetarian. So a lot of the stuff I'll do, it's for the whole family. So a lot of it's vegan.
Wow, so that's interesting because my brother, he kind of attempted to go vegan. He isn't like an athlete like you, but he's in his mid-30s. He's a pretty fit guy, and he really struggled. He felt great for the first, I think, week maybe, and then he just felt really, really weak. And his job's quite demanding, so he started to reintroduce me. So, like, how difficult is it, especially with like the kids, to keep up, especially a vegan diet, because that's really strict, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So with one of the things you have to look at is like the B12, which you get from like meats and things like that. I'll supplement that from time to time, but I do eat like cheeses and certain things that kind of give you that. But for them, we give them like gummy vitamins that are vegan, like kid ones. And I mean, they're all kids are pretty picky, right? So they're the same.
I'm trying to do at the minute. My girls, I'm trying to like sneak some probiotics into their drinks. But my youngest one, my eldest one's really placid and just, yeah, that's great, mummy, thank you. I'll even just let you put it in my mouth. My youngest one, oh no, she's the diva. I've got to like disguise it. I need to be quiet because she's upstairs. I need to disguise it in this milkshake that I make for it. It's like a healthy milkshake, but it's a milkshake.
Throw it in a blender.
I've got to.
That's the best way. That's the best way. That's what we. Oh, I just actually. That's funny you say that. Yesterday, I went to the store and I must because they've been eating like too much unhealthy things. So I went to the store. I bought some fruits, veggies, and I'm just like, okay, I bought some kale. I'm just gonna throw it in a lot of these like smoothies at night. Maybe we'll give them, and they'll be getting a lot more of the vegetables that they should be getting.
Good for you. I
Yeah.
interviewed Jimbo, who owns the Jimbo stores yesterday. That's my like favorite like health grocer, and
Okay.
and we were chatting about kind of availability of produce and stuff. And Jimbo's doing a great job of keeping up with all their fresh produce. And but
That's
as a
good.
vegan and as a vegetarian, how are you finding? Are you able to get what you need produce
Yeah.
wise?
Yeah, for the most part, I kind of have my stores that I make my rounds in. I'm kind of picking and choosing now every week and a half to kind of go to one of them. I like to go to Trader Joe's a lot. Obviously, I like Whole Foods, but for regular grocery shopping, it can get expensive. Um,
So
yeah,
I
so we'll go to
brought that up with
Sprouts. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, so we'll go to a bunch of different places. A lot of places now, luckily, are pretty. They have a lot of stuff that's vegan and vegetarian.
They do. Sprouts is great. And I
Yeah,
actually brought that up with Jimbo yesterday as well. You mentioned it being expensive. It is, especially when you've got a family. In my case, there's 4 of us in the house. You've got 5 in the
yeah.
house. You know, I want to buy everything organic.
Yeah.
But, you are adding like another $100 or whatever to your like overall bill for sure. So it's a difficult balancing act. But welcome back to San Diego, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm stoked to be back. I've always loved San Diego, and I was like San Diego's biggest fan. Wherever I went, I would just like talk it up like it was the best place in the world because honestly, I kind of believe that. So
I do too. I mean, I'm originally from England, but I've also lived in France. So I did 3 years there. So I haven't always been in the UK.
mm,
And then the girlfriend and I moved here around 2 years ago. And honestly, the 3 of us just agree we don't want to leave here. I mean,
yeah,
we're in Del Mar. I mean, it doesn't get any better
yeah,
than
no, it's
Del Mar.
beautiful
It's just
there. Yeah,
amazing.
for sure. I
Although
love
we've
Del
got a
Mar.
lot of May Gray at the minute.
Yeah, I know it's
Early,
a
yeah.
little overcast, but that's kind of normal around this time. It'll get a little humid. The sun will peek through, and then in June it'll just kind of get amazing.
So Sal, you're originally from San Diego, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. Originally from here, grew up like Del Cerro, San Carlos area, if you know where that is. Um,
Well, kind of. Tell me, yeah. I'm still a bit of a newbie.
so
I think I kind of know where you mean.
If you're taking the A freeway, you exit College Avenue, like as if you're going to San Diego State. Instead of going right to go to San Diego State, you go left and you kind of go up in those hills a little bit north of San Diego State.
So inland. Does it
Yeah.
get quite hot there in the summer?
Uh, yeah, it does, but not so much like what it gets, even east of me, like El Cajon and things like that. That could be like 10 degrees hotter, but I would say like right in the middle of what El Cajon and the coastal is.
Okay. Yeah, I still get a shock when in the summer I leave Del Mar to do something downtown and I get to downtown and it's like, oh my God, I'm checking like the car temperature, the thermometer, and it like you say, it's like a 10-degree difference.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that being in the UK at all.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's always raining there, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's always raining. And I know that you spent some time in Europe, which we'll get onto in a bit.
Yeah.
But tell me, like, what made you get into soccer or football, as we call it in the UK, in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my parents and my family are Sicilian, Italian, so soccer's in their blood as a culture as well. And just as a kid, just growing up, I just got into it, played rec soccer, started playing with my cousins, and then the older I got, I don't know, it kind of like my path kind of kept pushing me that way. Kept getting called into like all-star teams, whether it be like Southern California to start, and then regional, and then eventually, youth national teams. And so a lot of these programs kind of pushed me towards that path. And then it's something I love to do, and it was fun for me. And so, yeah, eventually it took me to, having a nice professional career that's, still going on.
Nice. When you were a little boy, like my brother would have dreamt of this because he's big into soccer. Did you ever like dream of being a professional footballer? And if so, like where did you want to play?
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny because like in England, everybody it's football, right? It's soccer. So
It's a religion. It's a
yeah,
religion.
yeah, and it's all like when you say growing up, I want to be a professional footballer. In the U.S., it's kind of like, oh no, I want to be a professional athlete, and that could mean baseball, usually, basketball, football, those kind of sports. Soccer is obviously in that realm, but you don't really think about it. At least when I was growing up, I was never watching soccer like on TV or on a league, or, obviously it's great what the MLS has become for the US, but even the English Premier League popularity has grown immensely since, when I was growing up. But yeah, I used to always say I want to be a professional athlete, whether that meant playing baseball or football, American football. I didn't know yet, but I love sports and I love being active.
Nice. And you started off at UCLA, didn't you?
Yeah. So I had some offers pretty much all over, and UCLA just kind of felt like the best fit. I didn't want to be, to be honest, I loved Southern California. I loved California. I didn't want to be too far from San Diego. So, and UCLA at the time, and, and it still is one of the best schools for soccer. At the time, a lot of players were, taking their game to the next level. So it just kind of seemed like the right fit, and, beautiful campus, beautiful school, great area. So it kind of ticked all the boxes for me.
So where did you go from UCLA?
So UCLA, I basically, so I was playing on youth national teams. At the time I was at UCLA as well, kind of around that schedule. And ultimately I made the under 20 World Cup roster in 2007. The World Cup was in Canada, and I had a pretty good tournament. And, I had an idea that I was going to come back for my junior year at UCLA, but I had some, scouts that had watched that tournament, and they basically offered me, good money and a contract at that time that I couldn't really pass up. And, a team that's playing in the German Bundesliga, playing as a 20-year-old at UCLA, I thought it was the right move to go.
Let me just ask you about representing your country, because that's like, you just kind of told me as if it's like a, just a run-of-the-mill thing. That's major. What did it feel like to have, the American kind of badge on your shirt?
Yeah, no, it's a big deal. And when you're young, I think, and you're playing all the youth national teams, you can't really describe it other than like it's just really cool. You just feel like it's the best thing in the world to be able to like go out and play and wear the USA crest. And then obviously I was only able to play one game with the full national team, but that's obviously the ultimate goal, to be able to go to a World Cup, which obviously I never did. But our coach Landon was arguably the biggest US soccer player of all time. So yeah, it's just it's a really cool experience, and something that I wish I would have had more games with them, but it is what it is.
Well, we're actually hoping to get Landon on the show in the not too distant future, so that will be a great chat. But oh my gosh, tell me, as a 20-year-old going from having lived in the US and in Southern California all your life, to then going over to Germany to the Bundesliga, what was that like?
Yeah, it was weird. So I went to Hannover, Germany. There was actually another American on the team, and actually a guy from San Diego. He grew up in Rancho Penasquitos. His name was Steve Cherundolo. So he played on the team, and he's actually still lives there. He's like been there 12 years, speaks full German, married a German wife, is just so into the culture. So when I was going there, I think he was about 28 years old. He was an established player on the team. So it really helped me out knowing that there was kind of someone there that knew the roots and knew where I came from in San Diego and could relate to me a little bit. The language barrier and the culture was for sure a shock. They kind of expect you to learn the language right away. And as much as I tried, it's tough, because when you're there, everybody speaks to you in English, because they recognize your accent, and they're proud of maybe that they learned English in school or whatever. So they just kind of go off on English. And so, it became comfortable for me to just try a little bit and then just go off on English, because it just got the job done quicker.
I hear you. When I lived in France, in English schools, you are taught French in school. So everyone in England has a basic understanding of French by the time they leave school. I did also take German, but German I found really, really difficult. I dropped it after a while and just concentrated on French. But so when I was in France, I wanted to practice my French. But as you said, some people have got such great English that they just want to speak to you in English. But I tell you something though, the area that I lived in was pretty much all French. There's hardly any English speakers there at all. So I was forced to use my French all the time. My kids were at the school there. No one spoke a word of English. And I found it really like quite tiring. Like my brain was tired. I'm having
because you're constantly translating it in your head.
Totally. And I also found, and I don't know about you, but how did you find like the native Germans? How did you find that they kind of got to know you? Because I never really felt that my French friends kind of totally got me, because I couldn't express myself in the way that I can
Yes,
in
absolutely.
English.
I mean, like, I'm more of like an out, laid back, funny, a little bit sarcastic person. And sarcasm honestly does not go far in Germany. Like, it just doesn't. And so when you're in the locker room and everyone's just making jokes in German, first off, I don't really understand them. And so it kind of turns you into a quiet person. Um, and then people maybe don't know your personality type, or what I've noticed as well is, like, even with teams, with and it goes on the other side too, like when somebody doesn't speak the language that's kind of talked on the team, it's almost like you treat them as if, not in a mean way, but like almost like they're not as smart or they're not as intelligent just because they don't speak the language, when in reality, like, they're a smart person, they just can't understand the language. So that's something I'm kind of aware of when players come to the US, once I left Germany, is like, okay, this guy's not dumb. He just doesn't understand a lot of the things that's going on. So he just kind of has to, translate it differently.
That's great, because I was speaking to Carrie the other week, and she was we were talking about the international kind of flavor of your team.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear that, you've had experience living in another country where you don't speak the
Absolutely.
native language. So do you think that experience in the Bundesliga, do you think that has kind of influenced you, certainly at this point in your career now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it made me a stronger person. I had gone from UCLA and being, one of the top guys there, to then going to Germany, where, it was a struggle to make the top 18 for the bench, for the game. And I was constantly training really well, and then, nothing was coming out of it. So it was frustrating for me. And it was like kind of like the first hard struggle in my soccer career that I kind of had to go through. It was also the start of my professional career, which, it led me to questions like, is it going to be like this forever? And then I got a pretty serious injury in my last year in Germany when I was 22. Doctors were saying I would never play again. It took, 9.5 months to recover. I was ACL, LCL, complete rupture. So it was a tough time, and like a bit of a reality check, and it pretty much set forth me to have a grind of a professional career the rest of my career.
How did the German players and fans receive you? Because, with all due respect, the USA is not renowned worldwide for its talent in the male professional league. It just isn't. I mean, you've got stars like Landon Donovan, of course. But so how, you're going into a country where football, similar to England, is like a religion. So like, how were you received?
Yeah, you're starting a little bit behind, right? But you're getting judged kind of before you even get there, of the type of guy you are, the type of player that you are. Luckily, I had kind of Steve Trundolo there that, they loved him there. He was a starter. He was from San Diego, an American. So I think Hannover had a little bit of a history of bringing in American players. And so I think that kind of helped me a little bit compared to going to like a random place that's never had an American, because I think the judgments would be even worse. But, luckily I was kind of the second wave of Americans going overseas. The first was maybe, 8 years before me, 10 years before me with Landon and Steve and a bunch of guys that started playing in the Premier League and in Italy, a few. So I'm sure they had it much, much harder, because U.S. soccer wasn't where it is now. But at the time when I went, I think it was 2007, 2002, they had a good World Cup. 2006, they qualified. 2010, 14. So it was starting to trend in the right direction. Obviously, the U.S. didn't qualify in 2018, which was, tragic for our country. But overall, we're starting to get a better reputation for sure.
Who did you support that World Cup, by the way?
Well, so it's weird. So growing up, I was all Italy because, you had to be around my uncles and my family. And then 2002, I started playing like, youth national teams and ODP. So I was all, US decked out, and I grew up American, right? I don't really speak the Italian language, even though it's like in my DNA. It's in my culture. My grandma only speaks, Sicilian to this day. She's lived here since 1966 and only speaks Sicilian still. So it's definitely in my culture, but I wanted to kind of, Italian uncles can be stubborn. So during those World Cups, they were, U.S. is nothing. U.S. is terrible. And in 2002, U.S., went to the quarterfinals. It was somewhat Landon's coming out, to the world, playing soccer
I remember.
party.
I remember
That World Cup was kind of the one that, made me the biggest fan of the team. And then obviously in 2006, I was starting to get really deep into, the U.S. soccer and starting to go pro and that whole thing. Then there wasn't really any question who I was rooting for. Although in 2006, I remember to this day, I was in Little Italy in San Diego, where my uncle has a few restaurants, and we were watching the game on the big screen. Obviously, Italy won the World Cup, and I may have been in an Italian jersey, kind of jumping on top of cars, going crazy.
Oh, you glory hunter!
Yeah. I was definitely hopping on that bandwagon.
So Italy are kind of your second team.
Yeah, that Italy. I mean, I'll always want U.S. to do the best, but Italy is kind of that other team that I'll always root for as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. What was it like growing up with that, real strong Italian influence?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, they love, like, more so my uncles, they love soccer. They loved watching soccer, and it always kind of peaked around those World Cups that, suddenly everybody was an expert in every single World Cup cycle. They didn't really watch much of it during the regular time, but come the World Cup cycle, they knew all the players, and Italy was the best team in the world every year. So,
well, what about food and stuff? And kind of, you mentioned the language. Like, how did you? Because you're an American, you're born here, but your family obviously are from another country. So, like, how did that influence your childhood?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, like I said, so my uncle has pretty much has always had restaurants growing up, and they have a few on the Little Italy Strip now, one being Barbusa and one being Nona's. So they're constantly down there. They're constantly hanging out, kind of running the show down there. And growing up, I was always down there as well. I have cousins that manage a few of the restaurants, and so I'm always down there, kind of hanging out, eating the food. So yeah, me going vegetarian, my family was like, "You're crazy." They just don't understand that side of it.
Italians are big meat eaters, as are the French.
I mean, they're pretty much eating everything. So, I have a funny story during Christmas. They were cooking all this different stuff, and they kept, they're also shoving food in my face all the time, and I'm like, no, like, I don't eat meat or whatever. And they just like gave me this look like I'm the craziest person in the world. It was pretty funny.
But, you joke about that, but like, how honestly did they kind of receive the fact that you are taking your diet down a very perhaps different route to the one that they always have?
They're definitely like looking at me like I'm crazy, and then obviously prejudging me like this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But, it is what it is. That's just my family, though. They're super like, all about Italian culture and tradition, and if you kind of go outside that realm, they'll like raise an eyebrow and be like, "Come on," like kind of give you a hard time all the time. But all in all, they're always gonna love you deep down, so it's not that big of a deal.
How are you with your girls with regards to kind of your Italian heritage? Do you kind of try and get them involved? Do you expose them to that? Or,
when they're hanging out with the family, like I said, my mother was born in Sicily, so she still speaks the language, my dad as well. So when they go down there, they'll kind of teach that side of kind of how I grew up a little bit. When they go to my grandmother, so their great grandmother, she obviously doesn't speak English, so they kind of start to kind of get a vibe of how they are. My kids are pretty outgoing, so they'll be hugging her and kissing her, and she loves it. So they're gonna obviously grow up with a lot of the traditions, but at the same time, I was born here, they're born here, so it starts sadly a little bit, it starts to dwindle away a little bit, that culture side of it, but I'll always try and kind of implement those things.
Nice. Have you got much families back in Italy still?
So my my grandmother is one of 7 girls, and so all her sisters live there. So I have second and third cousins all still in Sicily. So basically my mom has first cousins there, like 30 of them probably. So they're all still
Okay.
over there.
Okay, and how have they been impacted and affected by
You
the
know,
COVID-19?
I haven't spoke. My mom has spoken with them a few times. She's kind of just told me, yeah, they're doing well. It hasn't really affected like them personally, obviously, other than the economic side of it. But I don't know if they know like people personally that have passed away or that have had it or anything like that.
Okay, so that takes me to my next question. You are a brand new soccer club, only formed last year. This is your first ever season. And then this huge, unprecedented event literally derails and stops your very first season. Just what has been the impact of the coronavirus from a player's point of view as
it
well?
sucks. I mean, right? I mean, it sucks for everybody for a lot of different reasons, and people are having a lot harder things to deal with in life than just this. But yeah, as I mean, from my point of view, yeah, it sucks a little bit. Luckily we were able to at least squeeze one home game in there, which was like a really cool atmosphere, sold out at Torero Stadium. That was something I'll never forget. But yeah, I mean, we were starting to get rolling. I'm
You
not
remain
getting.
unbeaten, don't
Yeah, we
you?
remain unbeaten. I'm not getting any younger, so it would have been nice to kind of keep the ball rolling. Um, no pun intended there, but literally just yeah, it sucks. It got canceled. We'll see, or got suspended. We'll see, kind of what their plans are for the future, and hopefully we can, get started up again, in a safe way.
So, as captain, a big part of your job is to keep the team galvanized and focused and motivate them. How are you able to do that right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we try. We have player chats, and we'll do Zoom workouts with our strength coach, and guys will constantly be joking around, and a lot of the guys live at the same apartment complex down in Chula Vista, close to where we train. So, they're getting a lot of that camaraderie and whatnot. But what I will say is like the month that we were kind of on the field playing a lot, we were pretty close. Like for only being together a month, like the chemistry was developed really quickly, which is important for a new team.
Yeah, Carrie mentioned that. I certainly got a strong sense from my chat with her that the chemistry between players and coaching staff is fantastic.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your coaching staff, because you've got a really experienced coach in Carrie Taylor. You've got a new coach in Landon Donovan, but obviously someone who has incredible experience as a player. So, how is the coaching team, or the coaching staff rather, impacting on the rest of the team?
Yeah, you got Carrie, who's very good at kind of dealing with certain people's personalities, and I've always said she kind of just will always plug the holes. If there's a leak somewhere, she'll plug the holes. She's kind of the one that's kind of making the engine go. And then you got Nate, who is kind of young. He's young. He really loves the game. He watches a ton of soccer, and he's like a huge student, and he's like constantly evolving and learning a lot. And he's kind of the running the practices. We need to do this, we need to do that. And then there's Landon, right, who's been through everything, who's new at coaching, and he's kind of, I think right now, still taking it all in and learning how to be a coach, right? Because it's different when you're a player and then you become a head coach. You think, oh, you can just easily transition. And I've said this a lot. Landon's like one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet for a guy of his stature. So, he's not the type of guy that's just going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm the best U.S. soccer American player ever. I know it, how to do it. Let's do it this way. Done. He's like, he's learning from Nate and Carrie on certain things, which is kind of strange, you would think, because he's done it all, right? So, and I think that's good. I think that will actually really help him become a really good coach.
Okay, I've got to say, I'm a bit confused, because I thought you'd retired last season from professional football or soccer.
Yeah, no, so yeah, I had a career a long career in the MLS, 9 years. In 2018, in July, I tore my meniscus in my right knee, which required surgery. I had the option to either remove it or to repair it. Repairing it is better for the knee long term. So, the doctors kind of pushed me towards that. To be honest, it never really healed properly, and it ended up tearing again that off season. So I had some interest in some teams, and I had some interest to keep playing. But as you probably know, when you have kids and a whole family, like it was tough to keep going like year by year to all these different random cities and not really feel like we were ready to settle down, right? So it was pretty much either between San Diego or Las Vegas, because that's where my wife's family's from. So we settled there, and literally probably in the May of that year, which I had probably been living in this new house probably like 2 months, and then Landon messaged me. I think it was on Twitter, like a direct message on Twitter saying like, "Hey, I'd love to speak to you about something." Because I had just wrote like my retirement announcement, put it online, and I think he saw that. So then he was like, "Oh, well, I had plans of asking him. Let me see if he still would want to come play." So he called me, told me pretty much the whole thing that they're starting a team in San Diego. He'd love for me to be a part of it, and right away I was just like, "Yeah, like for sure, I'll drop everything here in a second to go play." Yeah, in San Diego. I mean, that's where I want to be. They never had a professional outdoor team that I could ever play on. The USL level is still a top level. Most of the second teams in the MLS play on it. In Open Cup, they constantly will beat MLS teams. So it was kind of the perfect stage for me to make a comeback and also have it be obviously in San Diego.
Yeah, what are the big differences between the USL and the MLS?
I mean, honestly, I've said this a few times. It's probably the difference of 5 or 6 guys on a team. USL is second division, MLS is the first division. So on a team by team, you could say MLS is better. They'll have those 6 or 7 guys on each team that are paid $500K and up, whereas the USL doesn't really have that. But if you on any given day, and obviously you see it all the time in the US Open Cup, USL teams will beat MLS teams. And even during preseason scrimmages, it's not like a cupcake walk where you're just beating these teams, 6-7-0. It's very athletic. I would say it's just as athletic as the MLS. There's tons of raw talent, and that's kind of what it is. These guys just need to get some playing time. Super athletic guys that just need a platform to play, and they're hoping to one day get to that MLS level.
How are you liking your role as kind of a mentor now that you are in the kind of last stages of your playing career? Mm-hmm. How are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it a lot. I think I've always said to the coaching staff and to people, there's no other team I would have kept playing for. I wouldn't have gone anywhere to play soccer. This was literally like the perfect situation. So for me, it's just like I want to improve everybody here in San Diego, everyone on the team to like maybe take their game to somebody somewhere else, but also like kind of grow the game in the community of San Diego, because San Diego has so many talented players, at the youth level and growing up, and obviously they didn't really have like that team to root for. They would have to go, whether it be like LA Galaxy or down for to Tijuana in the Mexican League. So it'd be cool to like really build a culture and a community around the San Diego Loyal.
Yeah, it sure would. And what advice would you have for young players, aspiring soccer players, and also their parents?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's kind of developed after from when I started playing was this whole kind of thing that you kind of have to pick one sport at an early age and stick with it. I don't, maybe some research agrees with that, but I think the idea of playing multiple sports kind of gives you qualities that maybe you don't get in soccer. I played a lot of baseball, and that had to do with a lot of like strategic and hand-eye coordination and things like that. And in soccer, you know, there's certain things that you don't really get that, right? So I encourage just like always getting out and trying different sports, and even getting away from the game a little bit too. Was always like a benefit for me mentally, because I never got burnt out playing, you know. Whereas like I feel like now when kids are playing year round and they're an extra, you know, personal training and constantly trying to develop it, sometimes it wears on a kid, you know. So I would just, you know, do it as long as it's fun and push yourself as long as it's fun. But if it becomes, you know, not that much fun, like you don't have to, you know, push it so hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I grew up training to be a ballerina, and that is
Okay.
all I did.
Yeah.
So I am, as a parent, I'm a lot more relaxed with my girls. So
Yes. I'm the
they
same.
do dance. Yeah, I mean, they do dance, but I'm not pushing them to be ballerinas. And
Yeah.
I want them to perhaps try things that I never, you know, got the opportunity
Yeah.
to try. So yeah, I was going to ask you, how are you with your girls when it comes to kind of sports?
Yeah, I mean, right now, my oldest has just done like dance and what else yeah, she's just done like pretty much dance and gymnastics and that type of stuff. My middle one, I could see she's kind of asked me like, oh, what's funny is, and it's mainly my fault, but she used to think, all of them used to think like soccer was a boy sport, because all they see, you know, were my games. They would come to the stadiums and they would just, and it was never in my head to be like, hey, you know. And then one day I was like, hey, you gonna play soccer? And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I started showing them YouTube videos of, you know, young girls playing soccer, older girls playing soccer. And they looked at me like, what? This actually exists, you know? So one day, and probably, you know, as soon as this is all over, I'll probably put the older one in soccer, and not really push her to it, but see if she wants to do it. I think she'll have fun. And then, yeah, if they want to keep going and really take it serious, obviously I'll be there to help, but I'm not going to force it down my kid's throat like some parents do.
Yeah, of course, obviously there are a lot more prominent female soccer stars for young girls to aspire to right now. I mean, they
Yeah.
only need to look at your team and look at the assistant coach, Carrie Taylor. I mean, she's a
Exactly.
fantastic role model for boys and girls. But, you know, that kind of makes me feel a little bit sad to hear that, like, you know, that your girls thought that soccer wasn't a
Yeah,
sport for girls.
because yeah, like
Yeah.
so they don't ever watch, they never watched it, right? So it was like they don't really watch cable TV, and it never was in my head to like put on I never watched soccer myself. I don't have time. So we would go, and their idea of soccer was they probably thought like every dad played professional soccer, you know. They would go to these stadiums and like look at the field and thought like every dad just like that was their job, was like playing soccer. So yeah, they saw the ball, they saw the guys, and they just thought like, you know, and it's just something that you never think about, because I'm just living life, you know, we're just living life. They're dancing, they're doing everything, they're doing their thing. And then they had just never seen it. So I had to, once I said it to them, like, hey, one day, you know, we'll put you in soccer. It was like a light bulb click for them. And they're like, what? Like, that's a possibility. And then I started, obviously I was like, what? And then I YouTubed it all, and, you know, showed all the Alex Morgan clips and YouTube clips of little girls playing soccer. And they kind of kept giving me these looks. And so they'll play one day for sure. Like even now in the house, there'll be a little ball rolling around. My girl will be like, oh, let's go play soccer. And I'll toss it to her and she'll kick it back to me. So it'll happen.
They'll be nutmegging you anytime
Soon
soon.
enough. The older I get, I mean, it's going to start tipping the scales.
Hey, do you think that that might be something in the future, you know, women's soccer that might be of interest to you? I'm thinking kind of like Kobe Bryant was with basketball and his daughter.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know whether that's something you've ever considered.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would coach them, you know, as I get older, and see where it kind of takes me. You know, obviously they'd have to kind of have that interest in it, which I think they will. But no, for sure, I would be totally into, you know, doing something like what he did.
Nice. I'm sure they'd love that. So
Yeah.
Sal, I hate to kind of labour the point, but you know, you're not quite a spring chicken anymore.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 33.
33, the
Yeah.
ripe old age. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. There's only athletes and, you know, soccer players that could be kind of old at 33,
Yeah.
ballerinas too, actually,
I know, right?
which is why I went into journalism, more longevity. So you're 33 now. what are your plans for your future? I mean, have you had to think about what you want to do once your playing career has come to an end?
Yeah, I kind of faced that a little bit earlier when I was retired, and I got into some real estate investing and stuff like that. But ultimately, after taking that time off, I did realize I want to be in soccer. I thought I wanted a break, and then as I was away from it, the grass wasn't necessarily greener on the other side. I mean, I could do some other stuff. I do have some interest, but I do want to, I think, now stick with the sport. Whether it be obviously working at some capacity with the Loyal in a few years once I can't walk anymore. So yeah, I like to stick with soccer. I like the general managing side of things, also the youth side of things. And so, whether it be, as this club grows, maybe certain things will open up and there'll be things for me to do, hopefully. That would definitely be something I'd be interested, and whatever I do, it will be in San Diego. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, I just love this place too.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, what's this podcast you have? Do I need to be worried? Is this kind of a rival to mine?
So it's called BSI the podcast. It's with me and two other guys that I played professional soccer with. One that's still currently playing and one that retired this past year. So yeah, we're basically just interviewing past players or people that are in the soccer, life, world, whatever you may call it. And yeah, it's done pretty well. Like, we were luckily able to interview Will Ferrell a few weeks ago, which was like a really cool thing.
Nice.
He's a really funny guy. So, and then we've gotten like some other cool interviews, and yeah, it's just something that's really fun, and that we started up, I think, last year. So
that's great. It's funny you mentioned Will Ferrell, because a friend of a friend is best friends with him, and I'm actually trying to get him on our show too. So maybe I just need to name drop you, and he'll agree to it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he could probably do the whole interview as Ron Burgundy in San Diego, and that'd be funny.
That would be hilarious. Yeah, so we need to chat at the end of this. Maybe we can swap some details. So listen, Sal, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Good luck. I hope everything kind of returns to some sort of normal. I mean, do you kind of like envisage, being able to perform in or play in front of audiences, like crowds? I mean, like what?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fun always to be able to play in front of crowds, especially your home crowd, right? I mean, one of the cool things that wanted me, to come back and play in San Diego was to be able to play in front of hundreds of my friends and family almost at every game, So, if we had to play games with no fans, and meaningful games, that'll feel really weird. I mean, you sometimes play practice with no fans and it doesn't have that same feel, but you kind of just have to adjust to all the times, and whatever it may be, you got to do it. So, yeah, it'll be strange, but got to deal with it. Yeah,
it's one of those sports though that you really do. I mean, not that I've played soccer professionally, obviously, but it's like ballet, like performing. You just get so much from the audience, but particularly when you're on the field, because soccer crowds are really loud. I mean, chanting's all part of the experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and obviously home field advantage is a real thing. And I think we were building a really cool one in San Diego. If you saw the highlights of the first game, so that part will definitely hurt us at home, because I think we could have made we could have been a really good team at home, and hopefully we still will be. But yeah, I mean, it's just going to be another wrench thrown at us that we're going to have to get over.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. As I said earlier, the team spirit and the just the kind of morale seems to be fantastic, and you've got some great coaches too. So, well, listen, Sal, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. You take care. Send my best wishes to your wife and your girls.
I will.
And let's get you back on the show in a few months. Hopefully when the season starts again, and we can check back in with you.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll let you know how it's all going.
Thanks so much. Stay healthy.
Claire. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.